Welcome to Thoughts by Ozma in the Dark. This is where I get to use my brain thinking to get all the thoughts out. Yeah, bet you didn't know I have a brain. Anyways, today I feel like just giving my thoughts about the Dirtbag Left. So when it comes to this conversation, I hear about certain individuals on the left, and by the left in this circumstance, it's oftentimes socialists or democratic socialists or social democrats or whatever. Somewhere in that general area. So the reasoning behind why they're called dirtbags, a lot of people feel like they're throwing minorities under the bus by the conversations that they have. For instance, they might say R slurs a bunch. The reason it's used to insult someone is because it is suggested that your intelligence is what makes you worthy of a lot of things. And if you don't have that, then you're not worthy. Similar thing with some of them are willing to drop N-bombs to prove a point. I'm not talking about black people dropping N-bombs. White, oftentimes men, leftists, just to say that's a word or something. It's the sort of thing where a lot of times these leftists tend to delve too much into the philosophical aspects of theory without actually factoring in the real world. And while they might talk about solidarity can only really come about if you feel like you're being fought for. If you feel like you will be dropped as soon as it's inconvenient for your rights to be fought for, well, yeah, people will not argue for you. So, like, dropping R slurs, dropping N-bombs, it gives off the impression that you don't care about these people as much as you care about proving some philosophical point. That does make some people not trust you. So yeah, that's why these people are called dirtbag leftists. An example of something that might upset people, Vosh. Vosh is it has been referred to as part of the dirtbag left. Now, Vosh seems to have some semblance of self-awareness. However, he doesn't always talk about things in the best way, and sometimes he seems to address things in a very detached way. Relatively recently, he talked about trans women in sports. Vosh agrees. It's fine for trans women to be in women's sports. Vosh said it was worthwhile to have that conversation on the left in terms of the general argumentative points. Now, when you say something like that, when you say it's worth a conversation, you're implying that there is validity, that trans women being kicked out of women's sports is a real argument to be made. And by giving that element of validity, it makes it easier for people to just listen to that. Just listen to someone saying, hey, you know what? I know I am fine with trans women being in women's sports, but you know what? Your opinion that trans women shouldn't be in women's sports because of hypothetical advantages, regardless of whether or not they've played out in reality, which they haven't, by the way, you're saying that that's a valid conversation to be talking about in the left. You're mostly on one side, but you can see the other side, the validity of it, and it's a worthwhile conversation. I mean, you don't say that shit about black people being let to sports. You're not saying that it's valid for people to talk about the ability for black people to be in sports because they've got all these hypothetical physical advantages. I know there's nothing to show that they have physical advantages for being black, but when it comes to real life, but it's still a valid conversation. No, you don't say that fucking shit. You're like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? There shouldn't be a conversation on the left. We're supposed to be fighting for people's rights. You expect trans women to back you when you say shit like that? If ever the circumstances are different, that maybe there could be a conversation to be had, but there hasn't been any sort of circumstance which even lends any sort of validity to that argument that trans women shouldn't be in women's sports. We've been in women's sports since, 2004. It's not There's been no Olympic level trans women. None. And there's one there's one trans man that almost got to the Olympics. Here's the thing. We're talking about sports. Sports is about fucking competition. You know what's competitive? Trans women competing against women. It's a competition. And for all we know, there might be more disadvantages than advantages to HRT. Trans women might actually have a net disadvantage for all we fucking know. I mean, the fact that no trans woman has even gotten to Olympic levels says something. But, you know, when it comes to arguments against trans women competing in women's sports, it seems to be not an argument about sports and competition, but more an argument about looking for excuses to keep trans women out. And yes, it is always about trans women and not all of the trans men who compete in men's sport or who try to compete in men's sports but are getting fucked over and put against women and just dominating and not having an actual competition. But yeah, sports aside, some members of the left need to actually reflect on what they're saying and reflect on the greater impact of putting videos out there. But what do I know? I'm an idiot with a handful of subscribers. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. The Patreon's down below, and you should see me weekly giving out my thoughts. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.